Hello and welcome. My name is Chris Robinson and I'm with Nebula Safety and Environmental. On March 13th, 2023, I shared a presentation at the Global Congress Process Safety entitled And the Regulator Clapped: New Approaches for Maximizing Worker Engagement in Process Safety Management. Now I realize that not everyone was able to attend this conference, and so today I want to share this presentation with you. Before we get started, let me share a little bit more about myself and also about Nebula Safety and Environmental. My name is Chris Robinson. I've been helping out and assisting companies improve in process safety management for over 20 years. I've worked in a variety of industries, including oil and gas, utilities, and also in pulp and paper. Nebula Safety and Environmental is a growing consulting company that specializes in helping clients improve in process safety management. Enjoy the presentation. So why talk about worker engagement in process safety management, you might ask? Well, I believe that the worker engagement element in process safety management is one of the most overlooked elements by a majority of companies. A lot of companies will skip forward and look at process hazard analysis, MOC, operating procedures, and those are all good things to improve in. However, the degree that your workers are engaged in these other studies and processes will directly impact your performance in process safety management. So I feel like that degree that those workers are engaged really has direct ties to how well you do in process safety management. So I wanted to share some approaches that have been found to be beneficial to boost worker engagement. The first thing I'll be sharing about is what is process safety management. Now, this may seem to be a bit trivial, but I believe it's important. How you define process safety will, as well as process safety management, will determine how you manage it, which will then, I think, dictate the performance that you achieve. Also, I want to share about establishing a worker-centric PSM framework. I've got some thoughts on how to better pull the workers into process safety management, get them to think about process safety management each and every day while they're performing their daily tasks. Next thing I'll share about is what I call supercharging the sharing. So a lot of folks do share process safety management, but I want to share a tool, an approach that has been found to be very beneficial at some sites for really maximizing that sharing, boosting the sense of vulnerability for workers at the site, and hence improving the worker engagement. Fourth, I'd like to share about the day the regulator clapped, and I've got a short story to share there, and I hope you enjoy that. And then I will draw a direct link to process safety management performance and show that these tools have been used to boost the worker engagement and in turn improve the process safety management performance. So let's dive in and talk about process safety. What is process safety? Well, I know what it means to me, but when I want to understand what it might mean to others, what I always do is pull up my good friend Wikipedia. So here you can see it. Here's the definition of process safety in Wikipedia. It's got a lot of good things in there. It talks about release events, talks about the Swiss cheese model, which I think is very important. And it's just got some good basic foundations for understanding how to think about process safety. So if I'm the worker and I pull up process safety in Wikipedia, I can understand how this applies to my role, whether I'm in operations, I'm in maintenance, or within engineering. I can walk through, think about my daily tasks, understand the Swiss cheese model, and relate that to what I'm doing. Think through what are the hazards that I can identify during my daily routine. How are we safeguarding or mitigating those hazards? And what can I do to boost the performance? What is it that I could do to maximize the ability of the site to have top tier performance in process safety management? So I really like this definition of process safety. I think it's It's very clear and it's very fundamental to the worker. Now, instead, if we pull up process safety management in Wikipedia, we get something completely different, which is a bit strange to me because we're just adding one word to process safety. We're just saying now that we're managing process safety, yet here it jumps right to the 14 elements and shows the 14 elements as a tool for managing process safety, leaves out the Swiss cheese model and leaves out some other critical information for that worker. So I think that this might leave the worker a little bit confused because it's a little bit harder to comprehend and store in your brain all this information on these elements, and it may not be necessary in their day-to-day walk or in their day-to-day tasks such as performing operator rounds. They might not see those as process safety management tasks because they're not specifically listed within the 14 elements. So I think that establishing a worker-centric framework for process safety management is very important. You want to include that worker in what is occurring, what is happening at the site. A worker-centric PSM framework improves the worker engagement in process safety management activities. They'll better understand what they're doing day in and day out and its link to the site's performance in process safety management. And that should then ultimately result in improved process safety performance. Now, if you look at these 14 elements that OSHA has for process safety management in more detail, you'll find that they all map very well to the Swiss cheese model. All of these elements are done such that you improve the situation with the Swiss cheese model. And what I mean by that is you better identify hazards that are at the work site pertaining to process safety management. You better understand your safeguards. You plug the holes in your cheese such that you have really robust safeguards in place. Workers are conducting all of these studies of PHA such that new hazards are identified, safeguards are implemented, safeguards are robust enough to prevent the incident and also to mitigate the incident, and that consequence scenarios are effectively mitigated and mitigated as low as possible for the site. So I feel like all of these 14 elements do coincide with the Swiss cheese model, and really the Swiss cheese model, or improving the situation with the Swiss cheese model, is essentially the aim of the activities that are conducted for these 14 elements. But what about all these other activities that workers perform? For instance, many workers are involved in lockout tagout. Many workers are involved in job hazard analysis. They might be involved in reliability assessments. Maybe they'll do process engineering surveillance on parameters that if they don't go well, that it could impact process safety performance negatively. Other workers are involved in emergency notification, disabling safety critical devices, performing operator rounds, donning PPE. So there's many field-based activities that are front and center for process safety management. If these activities don't continue to go well, then certainly that can negatively impact the process safety management performance. So what do we do with these activities? Do we leave them out of the model, or should we pull them into the framework? My thought is that we should pull them in the framework and actually put them right in the middle of the framework. I feel like these activities can have an imminent effect on mitigating or preventing process safety incidents. A worker-centric process safety management framework pulls in all of these activities and puts them front and center, right next to the Swiss cheese, which is the aim of every single process safety management activity, to improve the situation with that Swiss cheese. So in my worker-centric PSM framework, I put those activities right around the Swiss cheese. Those are activities that could prevent or mitigate an incident in process safety management that may be imminent. It may be likely to occur immediately, within minutes, within hours. And so these are very critical activities, and they should be the focus for field folks on a day-to-day perspective. When they're going about and doing these tasks, need to be thinking, if I don't do this well, or if I miss something, what could be the impact? And then go forward and do those tasks with excellence. Also, the other activities are additionally important, whether these are studies that are conducted in process safety management or incident investigations. All of those activities are very important too. And so I think that those should additionally be on the framework because they also are focused on improving the situation with the Swiss cheese model. So what I've done here is put the Swiss cheese in the middle, put the worker activities or field focused activities directly around that Swiss cheese to show that they are what's imminent and can really help to prevent, urgently prevent a process safety incident. And then I've put the activities that are looking forward on the left. These are your risk assessments, your process hazard analyses, MOCs. You're trying to think into the future, what could cause an incident and how to prevent it. And then I've put the activities where you're looking backward, such as incident investigation or learning from external incidents for others, field verification activities on the looking back side, because you're looking back and saying, we had this happen, how can we prevent this from happening again in the future? Or another site had this happen, how can we prevent this from occurring at our site? And in the end, what you see is there's a framework where the focus is on improving the Swiss cheese. So either identifying new hazards or plugging existing holes in the cheese. And it doesn't matter whether that's for field activities, forward-looking activities, or backward-looking activities. The focus is on the Swiss cheese, and that's what the arrows designate here. If you're conducting a process hazard analysis, you're trying to identify new hazards and also trying to ensure that your safeguards are robust enough. And so you're looking to improve the situation with the Swiss cheese. Same thing from an incident investigation perspective. Same thing from an operator rounds perspective or writing work permits. Now, in some cases, you may decide to say, well, we've conducted an incident investigation and we feel like we're okay for this specific chain of events, but we'd like to better explore what might happen if things go a little bit differently next time. So in some cases, you might take a backward-looking activity and then move it to a forward-looking activity, conduct that risk assessment, understand what the greater improvement opportunities are, and then work to improve the Swiss cheese once again. Work to understand additional hazards, work to mitigate more fully some of these risks, and move forward. So this is the worker-centric process safety management framework. Now I'll get into what I call supercharging the sharing. So with sharing process safety management, a lot of sites think, okay, we have an incident, great, we will share what we learn with our workers. However, what I've found is there's a lot of great incidents out there, external incidents, that are very high consequence severity. So these could be fatality level incidents or serious injury incidents. And these are great to share with your workforce because it's building the sense of vulnerability among your workforce. Maybe you haven't experienced a very catastrophic event where there's been fatalities or serious injuries as a result of a process safety management incident. Well, there might be a lack in a sense of vulnerability for the workforce then. Sharing these external incidents where these catastrophic consequences have occurred can help to build that sense of vulnerability, get people to think more deeply about what is possible at the site and what their role is in preventing and mitigating those incidents. It also helps with identifying the precursors or warning signs that an incident might be unfolding. So in the incident investigation reports for many historical incidents, they share the timeline of events or the sequence that occurred the day of the incident. Walking through those sequence of events with employees can help them better understand, if I see these warning signs at our site, then what action will I take? Will I make the right decision and help to stop that chain of events from unfolding? Or will I miss it? And what could make it such that I'm more likely to catch it if this is unfolding at our site? It also enhances the understanding of human performance factors that contribute to incidents. So this is one thing that is typically lacking in a lot of process safety management training activities, because many incidents involve human performance factors of various kinds. And it's important to have that discussion about these factors. You know, what also came into play during some of these past incidents, and how do we prevent that from occurring at our site? How do we understand these human factors that may come into play and work to improve our situation with the Swiss cheese, improve our safeguards, improve what we're doing such that we're not susceptible to an incident of this kind. Also, it provides insight for all levels of the organization. I've shared many process safety incidents all the way down from the worker level up to the site leadership level and even executive level. And oftentimes, leaders at sites are a bit timid to address certain things, such as smoking in a tank, right? Now, there's been past process safety management incidents where workers have been smoking inside of a tank that they should have been conducting maintenance work in. Next thing you know, there's a fire and a catastrophic process safety incident unfolds. Well, that's a direct violation of company policy, and it's just sort of understood at most sites that workers will not do that. But I would submit to you that the better approach is for workers to be made aware of it, and also leaders to do that, to make those statements, even though it may seem like something that doesn't need to be said. Share some things. How are we going to best protect ourselves from a catastrophic process safety management incident? Maybe it means that we do these certain things well. We smoke in the designated areas. We make sure that we label all the valves that we have for this critical process safety process where there's a high level of risk. So there's things that leaders can do then to better lead in process safety management. It also fosters a culture of learning and improvement. When you're learning from others, you're really digging in and understanding what others have seen in the past and how that relates to you. And then you can draw that connection and say, yes, there is an opportunity to improve, and the business case is there for doing something different. Let's get that alignment and let's move forward to pursue moving in a different direction such that we can improve process safety management. So here's a process safety incident that I'd like to share with you today, just to give you an overview of a format that I found to be successful. This was the Pennzoil refinery tank explosion in 1995, and one thing I really like about this incident is that this refinery has not been in operation for many years. Yet we can still learn from this incident that occurred in 1995 at this site. We can understand what occurred and work to boost our controls and our safeguards such that we can prevent a similar incident at our site. So what I often do is share a little bit of background about the site at first, and then I'll talk through the event. What was the sequence of events? Were there any warning signs that were not picked up? Was there any task that was not conducted? In this case, the workers went out on break, and when they returned, unfortunately, they didn't conduct a follow-up gas test. If they would have done that, maybe they would have identified that there was flammable vapors in the area and would have managed their work better. Then oftentimes I'll move to a backside, and for this one on the next slide you can see that there's a backside here that points to what the incident investigation team was able to learn and what they weren't. And that's because there were several sources, potential sources of vapor release during this incident. So they weren't able to definitively state which source of vapor release it was, but they were able to point those out on a diagram and then also talk through the potential sources of ignition. Information like this is what I believe is very important to highlight to workers, because if you're a maintenance worker and you're going to perform work like this, do some welding work around tanks, it's important to be cognizant that there's multiple sources of vapor and what those are and how we can protect ourselves from having a release of vapor while the work is being conducted. And then also think about the ignition sources that are being introduced both by the welding machine as well as other activities that maintenance is conducting. And so, it's important to highlight this sort of information, and I routinely do that when sharing process safety incidents. And then we'll talk about the consequences that occurred during the incident. Unfortunately, during this incident, there were some fatalities, 5 fatalities and 2 serious injuries, and then go through and share the learnings for the particular work site. What are the things that we can learn from this? Do we do welding that's similar to this on tanks? Would we be susceptible to a similar incident? What do we do in terms of our programs and processes and other work practices to prevent a similar incident at our site? Now I'll share a brief story about September 19th, 2019. So this was a day that I was presenting about Throwback Thursday. This is a safety sharing effort and sharing safety moments on a weekly basis such that folks really understand the sense of vulnerability and can kind of see the importance of process safety management and the importance of their work in terms of preventing process safety management incidents. On September 19th of 2019, I went to share this effort at the Community Action Emergency Response Safety Summit in Northern California. And I remember just opening up and saying, hey, welcome. And today is a special day because today marks the day that we've shared our 50th Throwback Thursday safety incident. It was a Thursday. September 19, 2019 was a Thursday. And then I went on to share the process, what we're doing, some of the formalities around it in terms of the structure and why, and got done giving the presentation. And immediately after I stopped talking, there was a regulator in the front row that stood up and started clapping. I was a little bit shocked by that. But then the whole audience stood up and there was a standing ovation. Next thing you know, I pan around the room and I see there's 4 different enforcement regulators that were regulating us at that time that I saw that were stood up and were clapping to my presentation. And I was really shocked at the time. I didn't think that anything I'd done was that clap worthy. I mean, we're still struggling a little bit in process safety management performance, at least from my perspective. We just had some process safety incidents, say 3 months prior. So, I kind of put that in the back of my head, said thank you, obviously, and moved on. Well, fast forward another year plus, and we still hadn't had another process safety management incident after that, as measured by process safety tier 1 and tier 2 incidents per API 754. In fact, that site went a streak of over 18 months without a process safety management incident that hit the tier 1 or tier 2 threshold. So I hadn't realized it at the time, but the process safety culture had improved. The worker engagement in process safety management had improved, and those results improved moving forward. Later on, I did realize that. I said, wow, this is really something special where we can get the workers very engaged in what's going on, better understanding process safety management, thinking through the risks on a daily basis, and understanding how to mitigate those risks for the work that they do. In fact, we had an external consultant come in and look at our process safety management culture, and they were shocked. They determined it was the strongest process safety management culture that they had ever assessed based upon the surveys and other activities that were conducted. And this performance carried forward. Eventually, I ended up leaving the company before that streak was over, so I don't know if it lasted 20 months or 22 months or even longer. But it really goes to show that boosting the culture, investing in the culture by sharing process safety moments on a routine basis, week in and week out, will change things. It will change folks' perspective. It will change their view on process safety management. It's not just an office activity, it's what we do day in and day out. In fact, we had workers that were making amazing catches during that streak of performance. They'd identify all these incipient leaks when conducting their operator rounds. They'd find a leak before it became a leak. There were folks in maintenance which were identifying that the torquing spec was inadequate for certain torquing applications. There was another employee who was an instrument and electrician side of the business and identified that the emergency shutdown valves wouldn't shut under specific scenarios and worked to mitigate that and make sure that those shutdown valves shut when we expected them to shut. So there was all sorts of revelations that were occurring by engaging that workforce, by getting them thinking about process safety management and really energized at the opportunity to improve the process safety management performance. Now, I've since reapplied many of these concepts in the pulp and paper industry, and I've also had great success in terms of improving the culture and the performance. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Now, I did receive two really good questions after the presentation that I also wanted to share with you today. The first questioner was asking about bulletins and if bulletins would be sufficient for sharing process safety information. My reply to that is that bulletins are very good, especially if you have an incident that just recently occurred and you want the workers to understand what the gaps were for that incident, such that you can prevent a future incident from occurring. However, bulletins do have limitations. They're not as personal as sharing in the video format. So if you're talking about bigger incidents, the fatality level incidents, or you're sharing external incidents that have occurred, I believe it's important to share in video format. It becomes more personal. It drives a deeper amount of introspective thinking from the workers, such that they think more deeply about what can occur and how to prevent an incident. In fact, when I share the Throwback Thursday incidents, I always share myself a picture of my face or a video of my face, just sharing and describing and setting up that incident, and then I'll cut to a voiceover of the PowerPoint after that. Then once I'm done walking through the sequence of events, talking through the consequences, I will share the lessons learned face to face with the audience via video format. And I think that that's important because it helps to nail down those lessons learned such that everybody's on board that these are the things that our site can do to work to prevent an incident like this from occurring. The second question was with regards to work groups and if I'd target a specific sharing to a specific work group. For instance, if there was a maintenance gap that occurred that resulted in an incident, would I share that with just the maintenance workers or would I share that with ops, maintenance, technical, and everyone else at the site that works in process safety management? What I found out over the years is that operations folks are very interested typically in gaps that can occur in maintenance, for instance, or within technical group. Folks want to know. They're very interested in what other groups do and how incidents can occur, whether it might fall within their line of responsibility or within another work group's line of responsibility at the work site. Also, a lot of incidents have occurred because work items have fallen through the cracks between specific work groups. For instance, maybe there's a handoff between operations and maintenance that didn't go well, and as a result, a catastrophic process safety incident occurred. So it's important to highlight those incidents as well and just share those for what they are, share those learnings such that workers in all work groups can learn and better understand how to manage process safety. So that's it. Again, thanks for watching the video. My name is Chris Robinson. I am with Nebula Safety and Environmental. We are a consulting company that focuses in process safety management, and we believe that sharing process safety is vital to your success at your site. So if you'd like help, we would love to help out and assist with this. We would love to provide some assistance in creating external event safety sharings that are high quality, that you can share with your organization and reinforce pertinent process safety concepts such that you can achieve improved performance in process safety management. So again, thank you and have a great safe day.